Either.
Hi, Yaakov.
The Swedish.
Hi. How come yours says Mario? Your screen says Mario on the bottom.
Because I Mario's I do all the savings of these videos,
I see.
and Mario started with it, but I've taken it over. So
I got it. Okay. I never noticed it before.
yeah, there's Abe. I think we're on 129,
Yeah, we are.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
In the second shear regarding the animals. Okay. So we're dealing with the malacha of what's called tzad, which is trapping or hunting. And tzad is one of the 39 ovos malachos forbidden on Shabbos. The definition of trapping animals is to remove the animal's freedom or to bring the animal under a person's control. The Hilchos Shabbos describes trapping as removing the animal's freedom. In the Rav Avigdor Nebenzahl uses the expression bringing the animal under a person's control. The terms of trapping vary based on an animal's classification according to three criteria. Number one, is it an animal which people often trap? So according to Torah law, a person is liable for trapping only an animal belonging to a species which is typically trapped for a certain purpose, such as food, or for its hide, or its beauty. For a species that is not typically trapped, the prohibition is merely rabbinic. Was the animal in a state of being trapped from the outset? One is only liable for trapping if the animal was initially in a state of not being trapped. But one is not liable for trapping an animal that is already considered halachically trapped. Number three, does the person's action cause the animal to be classified as trapped? One is liable for trapping only if the animal ends up in a situation in which it is trapped, as defined by the halacha. So first, how do we get the animals which are typically trapped? The Gemara in Hilchos Shabbos distinguishes between animals which are typically trapped for a specific use, i.e. their species is trapped, and those which are not typically trapped. According to Chachamim, who disagree with Rav Meir, the Torah prohibition only applies to animals of a species which is typically trapped. But there's a rabbinic prohibition to trap animals of a species that is not normally trapped. In Hilchos Shabbos Kuf Vav Amud Beis, Torah Rabbanan, Hatzad Chagavim, locust, Gazin, cicadias, Sarin, hornets, Vitushin, mosquitoes, B'Shabbos Chayiv, the Rav Meir. The Chachamim Oimrim Kol Shebemino Nitzod, if it's a species that is normally trapped, Chayiv. The Kol She'ein B'Mino Nitzod, Poter. It's Poter, but it's Poter Avalosser. Typically in Shabbos, when it says Poter, it doesn't allow you to do it, but it says there's no Chiv Chatas. The Rishonim, particularly the Rosh, the Rambam, and the Tur, followed by the Shulchan Aruch, rule with the Chachamim. Kol Shebemino Nitzod Chayiv Alav. You're Chayiv on Shabbos for Tzad if you trap something of a species which is a species that is trapped frequently. Ein B'Mino Nitzod, if it's not typically trapped, then Poter Avalosser. You're not allowed to do it, but it's only rabbinically prohibited. Hilkach, Zvuvin, flies. Aval pi she'ein b'mino nitzod, flies are not hunted for its food or for its skin, certainly not for its beauty, but osir lo tzudin. It's a rabbinic prohibition to, let's say you see a fly on your table and you put a glass on it. You're not allowed to do that. Min Rabbanon. You have to understand. You wouldn't be chayv achatas but you're prohibited to do it midrabanan. The Avnei Nezer explains this halacha further. He says that since no change occurs in the animal, the object of the malacha, that right, the animal is the object of the malacha, and no change occurs in the subject, but rather it's its relationship to the human performing the trapping, in that now it is in the person's control. This benefit, explains the Avnei Nezer, is not relevant in cases of creature that are not trapped for any specific benefit. He's trying to explain this criteria that was set up by the Chachamim of kol shebimino nitza. Nearly dainu tama, why'd they come up with this? The davar she'ein bimino nitzot potter, and that really you're not chayv achatas for trapping a species that's not normally trapped. The shanya melecha tzida mishar melachos. The malacha of hunting or trapping is different. Sheyesh ben shina b'davar shenasa bo malacha. Usually, there is something that changes in the object. You have a piece of food and you cook it. So the piece of food is changed by the malacha that you did. And we could go through tzvia, painting, right? Coloring, cleaning, right? Something happens in a change to the object of that you're doing the malacha with. Afilo otzot, you're going to ask, what about carrying from Rishus Harabim to Rishus HaYachid? There's no shinui l'chura in the object, right? Afilo otzot Rishus l'Rishus nishtan b'mashu b'Rishus acher. Avnei Nezer says it's in a different Rishus, so therefore the object has changed. The forces that are on it, the risks that the object is in, if it's in your house versus Rishus Harabim, where it is impacts the object itself. Aval tzeda ein shum shinui begufa chaya. Say when you trap an animal, you haven't changed the goof of the animal. Rak eitz la'adam shenasa b'shuso. You've changed the relationship between the person who trapped it and the animal. Val kein davar shebimino nitzod l'tzarech gufo. So a species that is commonly trapped by humans, because humans want its hide or its food. Choshev b'shuso sheyesh lo davar ma. So you have something important in your rishus now that you didn't have before. So there is a change that's happened. Aval davar she'ein b'mino nitzod. But if it's a species that's normally not trapped, mishum shein b'hem toelas klal, like a fly, there's no purpose. Ein lo klum af lacher shenitzod. You don't have any benefit after the trapping. Kagon hatzad zvuvim shein b'hem tzorech. When you catch flies, it's more because they're irritants. They're a nuisance to you. But it's not that. Is there somebody there who's coming for stock?
I don't know. I can't see
How do you know it's not one of our talmidim?
because I don't think so.
Nimsa shloi choshev b'rshus.
There.
Nimsa shloi choshev b'rshus rak she matzalatz moshlei zikol al kenut tzadam. Right? You trap a fly because you want to prevent it from buzzing you. And therefore it's not really in your rishus. You don't care to have it in your rishus. You'd rather have it outside. It's not considered that you've gained something. Therefore, al kein lo choshev melacha klal. So that's the Avnei Nezer sort of explaining the svara of the criteria. So which animals are classified as typically trapped? And what is the status of an animal which is not normally trapped by Jews, but it is trapped by Gentiles? The Ritva indicates that even if Jews do not trap it, it is classified as an animal which people do trap. Means if Gentiles, when they go hunting, they trap those animals, then even Jews don't normally do it, but they would be considered in that parsha. Grasshoppers, and we said cicadas. Vavagav, the chagavin chagav tomei, and even though The chagazin is a non-kosher type of locust. You can't eat it. Mikol makom necholim em legoyim. The goyim eat it. So we are still prohibited to trap it.
Ernie, sorry, before you start the next chelik, I came a little bit late, so I just want to ask to say the shir Li'ilu Nishmat, Liba Zelda Batzei.
Okay, we're going to say the shir tonight. Le'ilu Nishmas Liba Zelda Basaib, that's Walter's mother. Okay. So
She's not gonna leave.
when is it considered
Thank you.
trapped? The Gemara delineates the space in which an animal would be considered trapped by Torah law, and that in which the animal is considered trapped by rabbinic law. This is a Mishnah in Hilchos Shabbos Kuvav. Rav Yehuda Omer, Hadsad Sipor Lemigdal. You trap a bird in a tower or a closet. Utzvi labayis, or like a deer, it gets trapped into your house. So that is considered that you trapped the animal. And you'd be chayiv. The Chachamim Omrim, Tzipor lemigdal, utzvi lagina, and a deer into a garden, ulachotzer, or into a courtyard, ulabibrin, some other enclosure, chayiv. Rav Shimon Gamliel Omer, lo kol habibrin shavin. Not all enclosures are the same. Zakla. Mechusar tzeda potter. If the animal can get away, right? Then if it lacks trapping, you still have to run after it to get it. It's not immediately afoot. Then you're potter. The Shein Mechusar say if it's right there and you don't have to do anything else, and then you're chayiv. That's what the Mishnah said. The Gemara explains. It's not awesome. Ein sorin dogim in abibrim biyontov. Let's say there was a river, and a person made an enclosure at the bank of the river that allows some of the water in there, and fish come in there, and it's built in a way that they can come in, but they can't get out. And so you're not allowed to do that on Yontiv. Vein noisnein lifneim zoynes. You can't give them food. You can't feed a chaya that normally is not eaten on Yontif, so that's why you can't feed them. Aval tzorin chaya ve'of, we're talking about a kosher chaya or an oaf, you could hunt them. The noise lifneim zoynes, and you could feed them. These enclosures of wild animals, which like a deer or bird or fish, ain't certain, but you can't go in to that enclosure and get them. That's considered you violated sod. You can't feed them. And chaya nami loy kasha. So there's no contradiction because hababiber gadol, if it's very large enclosure, it's not. You have no access to the animal. It's considered that you didn't trap it originally. Hababiber cotton, but if a smaller one doesn't require any further trapping, it's not a problem. What is the criteria for a biber gadol? Hechidami biber gadol. Hechidami biber cotton. If you can run after it, if you can grab it with one lunge, you have it, so that's biber cotton. Anything else is considered biber gadol. Rashi clarifies the contradiction raised by the Gemara between the Mishnah Masechta Beitza and the Tosefta by explaining that according to the Tosefta, one may not trap an animal even if it's already inside an enclosure. This is in contrast to the Mishnah, which permits trapping animals that aren't inside an enclosure, right? Ein tzorem b'yontif, alma lav nitzud v'oimen kachoshev lei. That even if it's in an enclosure, if you can't easily get at it in one grab, then it's not considered that it had been trapped before. And now your act of trapping would be a problem. According to the way this contradiction was resolved, an animal is considered trapped already from before Yontif if it's in a small space enough that it's unnecessary to trap it again to secure it. Thus, enclosing an animal in such a space, if you did it on Yontif, is considered trapping. But if the animal was already in such a space from before Yontif, it's not considered trapping to apprehend it. But if the animal was in a larger enclosed area, one may not continue to trap it. That's midrabanan. Elsewhere, the Gemara Masechta Be'er describes the parameters of trapping differently. Heichi dami mechusar tzeda. What is considered that the animal lacks trapping? In that, if you trapped it, it'd be a violation. Amrav Yosef, Amrav Yidam Shmuel. Kol she'omer havei mitzuda v'nitzudenu. If you would say to someone, "Oh, bring a trap so we can catch it," because you wouldn't be able to catch it without the aid of a trap, so that is a sign that it needs more trapping. When Rashi explained that Gemara, Rashi indicated that the Gemara's criterion expands upon the different definition provided in the first Gemara. Accordingly, a space is large enough for the animal to be considered lacking trapping if a person must still engage in some kind of trapping technique to apprehend the animal. If you have to say Havei Mitzuda, bring the trap, Kloimar, you're going to do something tricky to trap this animal. This creates the criteria for what it means to have a large enclosure. Vice versa, where you don't have to use some kind of trap or cunning device to grab the animal. So in the context of the Hilchos of Shabbos, the Shulchan Aruch formulates the halacha according to all this criteria described in Hilchos Shabbos. The Shulchan Aruch also writes that one violates a rabbinic prohibition when trapping the animal in an enclosed place from which it cannot be caught. Hatzad sipor dror lemigdal shehu nitzid bo. You chase a bird into a closet and now it's trapped there. Ushard sipor, or other birds, utzvi or deer, labayas, or lebibber, to some kind of fenced-in area. She'nitzorim bo yechayiv. V'meino nitzid bo, but if it's not really trapped in there, and you have to do other things to get it, then potter of a it's rabbinically prohibited. In the context of the halachos of Yontiv, Shulchan Aruch explains the criteria for a free animal using the language of Masechta Beitza. Masechta Beitza is the Masechta dedicated with the laws of Yontif and Chol HaMoed. Shar kol chai v'olf shemechusarim tzeda. Other wild, undomesticated animals or birds that are lacking trapping. Shetzarich lomer havei mitzuda v'nitzudenu. Where you say to your colleague, "Oh, bring a trap so we can grab this." Asr latzudan, you can't trap them, and you can't litei lifnei mazonos, you can't feed them. As the Bir Halacha explains, both descriptions of the criteria for being trapped corresponds to each other. Ayin b'Mishnah Berurah, shekosafti, the shir tzeidehu, heiche dematile b'sichya achas. The criteria or shear to hunt is where if you can grab it in one lunge, then the animal had been previously trapped and you didn't violate trapping. Avagav de b'simin taf tzavich zayin ita b'shulchan aruch hashir the imtzarach loimer havei mitzuda v'nitzudenu, that this criteria is, you've got to say bring a trap. Loy kasha devar kvasra aposkim the eid of eidi chad. They're both the same thing. It's not defining two different things. It's the same issue. The Hilchos Shabbos summarizes these principles. Hamevi b'chaim l'makom sagur. You bring an animal to an enclosed space. Pamim sheyesh bo yisur Torah, upamim she'eino asr el mirabanan. Sometimes it will be a deraisa dikadin. Sometimes it will be rabbinic. If the place is small enough that you could grab your animal in one shot, you could do it in one sprint. You don't have to rest. And you don't need any implement. So that's Isser Torah. If you put him into a location which is big enough that you can't grab him in one shot, you have to run after him, then rest, run after him and rest. Or you need an implement to grab him. So, Ein B'tzida Zu Isser Torah, Ela Isser Drabanan. Shum Shein B'zet Seder Gemura. It's not full Seder. V'adayin Ein Balachayim Mudar Kanitza. He's not defined as fully trapped. Now, Mokum Kotna Sheyesh Bo Stokim Upinos Hamachbinin Al Seder. Let's say it's a small place, but it has corners and cracks that makes it hard to get him. And you can't grab him in one shot. That's Dino Kemokum Godel. That would be also a rabbinic prohibition. Vasagar Balachayim Betocha and over Isser Torah Isser Drabanan. Balachayim Animtza B'Makom Shabo Hu Mugder Kenitzud. If he's in a place already that's considered trapped, you can grab him in one shot without resting. If you wanted now to put him into a cage in that area where you could catch him in one shot, then you haven't done it. You haven't really changed the circumstance. Even before he was in the cage, you could grab him. So that's why putting him in a cage then doesn't create an Isser. He was already defined as trapped at that point. Rav Nissen Karelitz also summarizes the parameters of trapping. He cites the Mishnah Berurah, who writes that one may not close the door or window of a house if a bird flies in, since this would constitute trapping on a rabbinic level. But Rav Karelitz notes that the minimum standard for this rabbinic prohibition of trapping is not fully spelled out in the sources. He suggests that this is violated if one brings an animal to a place where some feeling of control has been achieved. Accordingly, trapping an animal, trapping a deer, within a large city with a wall would not constitute trapping even on a rabbinic level. Presumably, the same would apply to closing the door to a house with a fly inside. Tanan, Ze'aklal, Mechusar Tzeda Potter. If we created the criteria that if it lacks trapping, you will not be Chayv Midaraisa. Trapping it into an area, would there be no Chiyuv Daraisa? Because it lacked, you can't get the animal. There's still a rabbinic prohibition. Because of Mishnah Berurah, Potter of Losser. Valkain Sipor Dror, a wild bird, Shenichnas Labayis Dercha Pesach, who flies into your house through your door or chalon, Avagav Shenenitzot Sham. You can't grab the bird. The bird's going to fly around your house all day. So the Mishnah Berurah said, don't close the door. However, Tzarchian, the Rav Karelitz didn't agree. Let's say you chased a deer into a walled city. Let's say the old city of Jerusalem. Given Shamakam Gadol, it's a huge place. It's no difference for that animal whether you were in the wall or outside the wall. If the animal still feels that he's under his own control, but if when you bring into an animal and then the human being thinks he has the animal in control, then there would be Tzurba Mrabanan, even though it was not trapped. Now, how does it apply to us? I mean, we don't live where there are wild animals. You notice we talked about Chaya and Oath. talking about undomesticated animals. And we have coyotes, but we're not in the business of trapping them. But we have squirrels running around in our backyard,
Nobody's touching them either.
right? But I mean, technically, you're in contact with them, okay?
Mm.
So the halacha identifies 6 circumstances in which the restrictions of trapping on Shabbos are more lenient or are permitted altogether. Domesticated animals, right? Dangerous animals, biting insects, animals which move extremely slowly, when one intends to protect himself from the cold, or closing a door that was opened. So let's go through all these leniencies. So the mloch of trapping refers to the act of enclosing an unrestricted animal in a confined and controlled space, right? A wild animal is used to being unrestricted. According to this, in the case of animals that do not run away from people, but rather actively pursue confinement and not freedom, then enclosing them in a space cannot be considered an act of trapping, at least on a Torah level. This classification includes 2 categories of animals. Individuals from species of wild animals, chayos, or birds, that have been domesticated and live in a cage. Since they return to their cage every night, and they may be readily caught, apprehending them does not constitute biblical trapping. Pets are domesticated animals which do not seek to escape from people. So the first case of chayos and birds that live in a cage, that's addressed in Masechta Shabbos Yudal. Chay va'ov shebershuso. Wild animals or birds that he's controlling them and they're in his possession, and they've been domesticated. Then hatzadon potur. Trapping them you're certainly not chay midaraisa. Significantly, the Gemara observes that when the Mishnah describes someone performing a certain action on Shabbos as exempt, that implication is that the person is not liable, but nonetheless, the action is forbidden midrabanan, as we said before. It's the practice in Masechta Shabbos that when you see the word potter, it doesn't mean you're allowed to do it. It usually means potter avalosser. Sometimes in the Gemara analyzing a Mishnah where it said potter, it'll come to a conclusion that potter really meant mutter. But that's an exception. The general rule in Shabbos is potter avalosser, that it's a rabbinic prohibition. However, there are 3 exceptions to this rule, one of which relates to trapping. Here it is, in Masechta Shabbos, Kuf Zayin, Amar Shmuel, Kol P'tur de Shabbos Potter Avalosser. Every time in Masechta Shabbos, where you're given an halacha, blah, 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 if you do this, you're chayiv. But if you do this in this way, it's potter. Doesn't mean that you're allowed to do it. It means it's potter, but it's rabbinically prohibited. Levad ma'ani tlas, the potter umutter, that it's potter and you're allowed to do it. Chada ha, and then it goes into this case of trapping a domesticated animal. The Gemara does not spell out which specific cases of trapping are included in the exception identified here. And the poskim disagree regarding that point. According to the Beis Yosef of Yosef Karo, the commentary on the tour is called the Beis Yosef. He eventually wrote the Shulchan Aruch. The Gemara refers to any case of trapping an animal which is already in one's possession, which includes the Mishnah in source 27, which is what we just mentioned, as well as in the earlier Mishnah. That Mishnah refers to a case where an animal is trapped in a house with one person blocking the open door. The Mishnah states that if a second person replaces the first in blocking the door, the second person is exempt. Shmuel comments that the second person is in fact permitted l'chatchila to replace the first, since the animal inside was already trapped beforehand. Accordingly, back to the text, although both Mishnayos state that a person is exempt for trapping such an animal, the meaning is that the person is readily permitted to do so. Chaya o'ov shebershuso, an undomesticated animal no, a chaya, which you've domesticated, or oaf, that you domesticated, that it's already in your rishus. If you hunt them potter, v'chol Shabbos potter avoloser b'hach bar mehanet plus, except for these ones that were mentioned by Shmuel, including the case of trapping an animal that's already in your possession. Some disagree with the Beis Yosef, particularly the Ramah and Darchei Moshe. And the Darchei Moshe cited the Shiltei Giborim Rishon, who ruled that it's forbidden to seize foul and wild animals that are already in the person's possession. Evidently, he assumes that when the Mishnah in source 27 writes that one is exempt in such a case, the meaning is exempt but forbidden, potter avoloser. But he does permit taking entirely domesticated animals such as cows. Says the Ramah in the Darchei Moshe. B'hago al Fasi, the Shiltei Giborim on the Mordechai. The Mordechai is a Rishon that appears in the back of most Masechtas. Also, likach avzim v'tarnagom, you can't grab geese and chickens. Or other wild animals that are in your house. Kigon tzviim, deer, shebegatlim beveso, that you're raising in your house. Avol behemos mutter, but a real domesticated animal like a cow, as opposed to a deer. Kigon paros, v'rechalim, sheep, ushar behemos. So that you could go and grab them. Rav Yosef Kar and the Ramah debate this halacha as well in the Shulchan Aruch. In accordance with their positions cited above, Rav Yosef Kar rules that it is permitted. The Ramah rules it's forbidden. The Ramah also adds that one is liable biblically for trapping or seizing domesticated animals that rebel or resist capture. Chayva shebeshuso. The Shulchan Aruch says clearly that wild animals or birds that are in your reshus, mutter l'tzoyden, you can grab them. V'hu shaloim rodu, as long as they're not resisting. B'yesh ramim da'asur l'tzud chayva of shebeshuso v'imtzadim potter. You may not l'chatchila hunt them. If you hunt them, it's potter. There's no chiyuv chatas, but you're not allowed to do it. Aval par v'sus, a cow and a horse. The koshken shar chayva of shemordu. But a cow, a horse, other animals that are rebelling, and the Mishnah Brura clarifies. Any animal that you domesticated, you brought them into the house and you domesticated them. Mutter. Even if they're outside. Batam kivin shem b'nei tarbus, they're domesticated. They used to be coming into the house. They'll come into the house at night. And they're easy to capture. They're like psychologically trapped. And you can't use the word Seder in reference to getting them. The Aser, the most of the later Achronim paskin like the Ramah. Aval par v'sus perush, the b'par v'sus she'em mine behemos. Cows and horses are animals, domesticated. Lo shaykh tzeda klal, afilu rabbono. There's no hunting by them at all. Afilu kono isam mechadash. You didn't even train them. You just bought them like that. They're not even accustomed to coming into your house. They're not running away from anybody. You can take them, put them in a small place. Now, other wild animals, even though they're in his reshus, will run away. You don't need a trap. Because at night they'll come back to the house. We call mokum. At least there's a rabbinic issue. Yeshbo isur tzeded rabbanon. That's not, they're not fighting you. If your horse and cow are also rebelling, and you grab them chayv chatas, avot tzeidosa, afilu nizgadlu mitchilas, even if they grew up in your house, v'zer shekosov. That's what the Mishnah Berurah explains, what the Ramon meant when he said, Kol shekein shar chayv ha'ov. V'hu shemardu, he's talking about the ones that are rebelling. Then even that part of a sus is in that thing. Right? Ubarchu meshuso achetzarch levakesh metzuda. You need to get them trapped. Or is it takbulus latafso? They're not coming to the house. Then, if they completely are not domesticated anymore, then you would have a chiyuv to hunt them. And to summarize the Mishnah Berurah, explanation of this machlokas between the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. The Shulchan Aruch says one may trap a cow, horse, or other naturally domesticated animal in any location, no matter where they are, since they willingly submit to human control, do not normally evade capture, even when they have just been newly acquired. The same applies to other animals or birds that have become domesticated, return to their cage at night on their own. The Ramah, one may trap a cow, horse, or other naturally domesticated animal and location, since they willingly submit to human control, do not normally evade capture. Other animals or birds that have become domesticated and return to their cage at night on their own, but they're not cow, horses, or other naturally domesticated animals. They're wild birds or animals. There's a rabbinic prohibition. They're subject to trapping rabbinic level because they often do try to evade capture by humans. And the halacha is in accordance with that opinion in the Ramah. Both of the above types of animals that actively rebel or resist capture and will not return to their cage or barn at night, so they are subject to the biblical prohibition of trapping, even according to Shulchan Aruch. How do these principles apply to house pets today, such as dogs and cats? The Ramah writes that a cat has the status of a non-domestic animal with respect to trapping. It's a chaya. Chatul dina kishar chaya. V'asr l'tafsa b'Shabbos. You can't grab it on Shabbos. It's considered tzeda. Quoting Rav Nissim Karelitz, the Torah Samlachos explores this question in further detail and claims that the Ramah is referring to cats that roam the streets. Of course, you see that commonly in Israel. But dogs or cats raised as pets clearly have the status of domesticated animals.
Yeah, can't be otherwise.
Right? Rav Nissim Karelitz, Shlita Shamati, the Hakol Talim HaKelev Ukelev Beiti, if the dog is a house dog, Olah. The Kelev Beiti, Havike Behema Shein Bot Tzeda, then there's no prohibition of tzeda by a dog. A animal that doesn't run away and knows its master, so that's kach kelev bayis. That's a domesticated dog. Umashakasav Rambam shehu kechaya. The Rambam talked about a dog as a chaya. Shabbos. It's not referencing these laws of Shabbos. The Gabi Shabbos are called toloi imavi b'nei tarbus. Regarding Shabbos, it has to do whether they're living among humans. Imlav. V'loimu kori behem achaya. Not whether their name is a behem or a chaya. V'shem em Gabi Shabbos eino el simin velosiba. It's just, we're describing the animal by saying it's a behema. Ad kan dvara. And so the Torah Samlachos says from Rav Karelitz, Shramati, Ulam b'tzera kol toli imi barechas k'sherotzim letzuda. Does it try to escape you when you come to get it? A behema is eno barachas. And a domesticated animal is not going to run away. Yada shor koneu. An ox knows its master. Chamor avus balav, it feeds you. Aval chatul dina kachaya. Given she barachas v'kashal etzoda. A cat will run away from a person, and it's not that always easy to trap it. However, that's called zedavka b'chatulim animtzim b'chovot ha'ir b'yarot. That's if you find cats in the street or forests of a chatul beiti, but a domesticated cat. Shemezunosav alacha, you feed it. Habibnei tarbus, they're domesticated. They live among people. V'chazers l'balav, it comes back to its house. B'shulam zenoisav. Alkein ein bo mishum tzeda ad kan dvarav. So according to Rav Karelitz, most pet dogs and cats would qualify as domesticated animals and are not subject to trapping at all. Consequently, it's permitted to force them to enter a cage, doghouse, or small space on Shabbos. Most other poskim accept this approach. Piskei Tshuvas, the Pnei Halacha, right? Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, 39 Malachas, Shabbos Home. Nevertheless, poskim dispute whether a pet belonging to one person is subject to trapping by another person. Rav Shlomo Zalman is lenient about this question. Rav Ribiat rules stringently. Rav David Ribiat notes that pets that are newly acquired or have just moved houses with their owners may sometimes try to escape. In such cases, it may be forbidden to trap them. Rav Ribiat also writes that if a dog or cat escapes but would return on its own at night, one may not do an act forbidden as trapping midrabanan, except if the animal may cause harm to itself or others in the meantime. A new pet, cat, or dog.
I don't understand if it's domesticated and you move with it and it runs away. It's domesticated. It's your pet. What's trapping? It's your pet.
Let's see what he says. A new pet, cat, or dog that is not yet accustomed to its new owner and surroundings and tries to escape is not considered self-confined, even though it is a domesticated species. Therefore, closing the door of the house to keep the animal from running off is considered tzad. Walking this cat or dog on Shabbos, where if you were not holding it, it would run away while holding it, is tzad, right? If the animal tugs and pulls at the leash in an effort to run away. One is not permitted to trap or restrain partially domesticated animals under most conditions, because within this constant, it appears to be tzad. Trapping the animal is therefore trod mirabanan. Example, if a pet dog or cat ran off, capturing and returning it to the house is not tzad midraraisa if the pet was expected to return by the same night. But it's rabbinically prohibited to do so unless the owner fears that the pet will be harmed or cause harm and damage. I think you can assume that most people are going to be concerned that their pet will be harmed or that the pet will harm other people. So I think that is a reason to be lenient.
So this doesn't consider at all the question of muktzah of an animal, which I guess we'll pick up in muktzah.
Correct. We'll get there.
Yeah, it's just trapped.
But obviously, I'm not sure if they had the Rovia had an animal, because all animals, whatever it is, they all pull on the leash. They pull on the leash. They're not done. It doesn't mean they're running away, but they pull on the leash.
So he means pulling on a leash to run away. That's what he said. He said to run away.
Okay. Okay. Hard to understand.
Pulls on the leash in an effort to run away. If the animal's going to return to your house, then that's it. It's considered domesticated.
And sometimes they don't return to the house and they could be domesticated. I've had many times.
No, but you see, they use this as a criteria.
I understand
domestication.
Sometimes I understand that they're using that as a criteria, but I'm just telling you, some pets do not return. They're your pet. You have them for 6 months, and suddenly something happens, spooks them, whatever it is, they run away. They don't come back because maybe they get lost. You don't know. It's happened. So I'm not sure if it's a clone.
So he said, if you move and all of a sudden the pet is not used to its surroundings, and that may change the criteria. Normally, if it's in your house all the time and it's very domesticated, but he wants to say that it might those circumstances might change because the dog's certain circumstances might change.
But I think you're right that in any circumstance, you're worried about the pet harming others or
Correct.
himself.
Or the pet getting harmed.
Correct. And you
Sorry?
see that's a leniency.
Or the
And that
pet
would be the
getting
safe
harmed.
harbor.
And also
Exactly.
today, or Ernie, in today's world, some of these pets cost a fortune of money. And people are stealing these little dogs. They steal them. They take them, they pick them up, and they take them. So you don't take it. You have a big hefsate. I'm just telling
Yeah,
you.
but a hefsid is not a reason to violate a.
I understand, but that's, in other words, the dog can get harmed. In other words, the dog can get harmed.
So that in a chanami, and then you have then there's a shmira there. Okay, I'm going to stop here. I think it's a good place to stop because I think the dangerous animal thing is very interesting. I think the next stuff is very interesting.
Okay.
Next
Thank you.
week, same time, Tuesday night. Hang on, when is
No. It's
Purim.
after Purim.
Purim.
It's like, get it. Purim, Suda, everything.
Well, I would recommend that we do it Monday night.
No, you
Monday night is Megillah Esther, Ernie.
I'm sorry.
can't.
I'm sorry. So Tanis Esther is
I
Monday.
recommend also you should do it. You know what? Maybe you should do it. So,
Tanis Esther is Monday.
And Monday night is the Megillah reading. or the
Okay,
Megillah reading.
so
Wednesday.
Wednesday night.
Does
Wednesday
that work
night.
for people?
No, Yaakov goes to the.
Actually, I'll be out of town, so I can attend Wednesday night.
Okay, so fine, we'll do it Wednesday night. We'll send a message out. I don't know where Mario is, but we'll send a message out.
Okay.
Okay, Shkoyach, everybody.
Okay.
Be well, everyone.
Very
Shalom
nice.
Purim.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, take care. Sure.